All right, Mosiah chapter 20. Last thing that we read. Do a little recap. My computer is being oddly slow right now. Gideon seeks to slay King Noah. Yeah, so King Noah and his priests kill Abinadi. Alma repents and goes into secret. He goes to the waters of Mormon and preaches and baptizes people there. We read about his baptism and the formation of their little church out there. And then there were some disputations among the king and the people. And Gideon, this guy in particular, is like, you know what? I've had enough of King Noah, and I'm going to kill him. And King Noah, before he's about to be killed by Gideon, sees that the armies of the Lamanites are coming into their land. And he's like, yo, don't kill me. The Lamanites are coming, so we gotta figure this out. And Gideon's like, all right, whatever. So he lets King Noah live. The Lamanites come upon them and start killing them. King Noah eventually convinces like a bunch of them to leave their women and children because that's what's slowing them down, and just continue into the wilderness. The people that the women and children that they leave behind do not get killed by the Lamanites, but rather they're taken as slaves. And the people that King Noah convinced to leave their women and children decide that that was a really bad move, and they wouldn't have done it had it not been for King Noah. And so they decide they're going to kill King Noah. And so they burn him to death, which is exactly what Abinadi said would happen. And however, the priests of Noah continue moving on through the wilderness, and they are nowhere to be found. So that's where we're at in the story, and we're about to catch back up to the original timeline. We're about to be done with the flashback. That's the goal here, is to read through chapter 22 so that we can get back to the original timeline. So chapter 20, some Lamanite daughters are abducted by the priests of Noah. The Lamanites wage war upon Limhi and his people. The Lamanite hosts are repulsed and pacified. Now there was a place in Shemlon where the daughters of the Lamanites did gather themselves together to sing and to dance and to make themselves merry. And it came to pass that there was one day a small number of them gathered together to sing and to dance. So they're at the club. The Lamanite, the club of Shemlon. And now the priests of King Noah, being ashamed to return to the city of Nephi, yea, and also fearing that the people would slay them, therefore they durst not return to their wives and their children. So they abandon everybody in this crisis, and now they're too chicken to go back. And they're just kind of out there in the wilderness, and they're like, well, we can't go back home, and we can't really just waltz into the Lamanites' land either, so what do we do? Verse 4, and having tarried in the wilderness, and having discovered the daughters of the Lamanites, they laid and watched them. So they're like, oh, we'll spy on the Lamanite daughters because they're hot. And when there were but few of them gathered together to dance, they came forth out of their secret places and took them and carried them into the wilderness. Yea, 24 of the daughters of the Lamanites they carried into the wilderness. So they straight up just kidnapped 24 daughters of the Lamanites, which is just wild. I mean, the priests, dude, the priests of Noah are just one selfish move after another. They just have they have zero dignity. And it came to pass that when the Lamanites found that their daughters had been missing, they were angry with the people of Limhi, for they thought it was the people of Limhi. So they automatically just start accusing Limhi and his people, who are basically their slaves. They're just back living in... do they live in Shemlon? Or no, Shilom. They live in Shilom. They're back living in Shilom. And the Lamanites, their daughters go missing, and they instantly are... They're obviously like, well, it's obviously the people of Limhi. So... but it was the priests of Noah. Therefore, they sent their armies forth, yea, even the king himself went before his people, and they went up to the land of Nephi to destroy the people of Limhi. And now Limhi had discovered them from the tower. Even all their preparations for war did he discover. Therefore he gathered his people together and laid wait for them in the fields and in the forests. And this is really unfortunate because if you'll remember that Limhi and the king of the Lamanites signed a peace treaty, basically. I mean, they made this oath of peace, and now Limhi is just chilling on the tower and sees that the Lamanites are coming to their city ready to fight. And instead of even attempting to be like, well, are we going to go, I guess I could go ask them why they're going to break their oath here? I mean, I don't feel like that's a practical... I don't think that's how these battles went down. And as we'll see, the Lamanites just come in and start killing them. And so Limhi's course of action is like, well, I guess we'll just prepare for war then. Which sucks, but I mean, what can you do? They're coming to kill us, so we got to retaliate. Verse 9, and it came to pass that when the Lamanites had come up, that the people of Limhi began to fall upon them from their waiting places and began to slay them. And it came to pass that the battle became exceedingly sore, for they fought like lions for their prey. Rough description, dude. And it came to pass that the people of Limhi began to drive the Lamanites before them. Yet they were not half so numerous as the Lamanites, but they fought for their lives and for their wives and for their children. Therefore they exerted themselves, and like dragons did they fight. And it came to pass that they found the king of the Lamanites among the number of their dead. Yet he was not dead, having been wounded and left upon the ground. So speedy was the flight of his people. And they took him and bound up his wounds and brought him before Limhi and said, Behold, here is the king of the Lamanites. He, having received a wound, has fallen among their dead, and they have left him. And behold, we have brought him before you, and now let us slay him. But Limhi said unto them, Ye shall not slay him. Don't kill him yet, but bring him hither, that I may see him. And they brought him. And Limhi said unto him, What cause have ye to come up to war against my people? Behold, my people have not broken the oath that I made unto you. Therefore, why should ye break the oath which ye made unto my people? So Limhi's like, we didn't do anything wrong. We have kept up our end of the deal. What the heck are you doing? Why are you breaking your oath when we have not broken the oath on our end? And now the king said, I have broken the oath because thy people did carry away the daughters of my people. Therefore, in my anger, I did cause my people to come up to war against thy people. 16, and now Limhi had heard nothing concerning this matter. He didn't know about any kidnapping of Lamanitish daughters. Therefore he said, I will search among my people, and whosoever has done this thing shall perish. Therefore he caused a search to be made among his people. Now when Gideon had heard these things, he being the king's captain, he went forth and said unto the king, I pray thee, forbear, and do not search this people, and lay not this thing to their charge. For do ye not remember the priests of thy father, whom this people sought to destroy? And are they not in the wilderness? And are not they the ones that who have stolen the daughters of the Lamanites? So Gideon comes in clutch again. And I think that's where I kind of got confused about like whether Gideon was Noah's right-hand man. It says that he's the king's captain in verse 17. He's obviously Limhi's captain, which I feel like you could infer that he was also Noah's captain, but there also is a fairly decent chance that he was not, and that Limhi just made him king's captain. So I don't know. But Gideon's the one that's like, yo, what about the priests of Noah, dude? Like, they're still out there in the wilderness. Surely it was them that did this. Like, none of us did it. It was obviously those chumps. And then I love how fast Limhi is just like, oh, duh. 19, and now behold, and tell the king of these things, that he may tell his people that they may be pacified towards us. For behold, they are already preparing to come against us, and behold, also there are but few of us. And behold, they come with their numerous hosts, and except the king doth pacify them towards us, we must perish. For are not the words of Abinadi fulfilled, which he prophesied against us? And all this because we would not hearken unto the words of the Lord, and turn from our iniquities? So Gideon also realizes the need for repentance here. And now let us pacify the king, and we will fulfill the oath which we have made unto him. For it is better that we should be in bondage than that we should lose our lives. It is better that we should be in bondage than that we should lose our lives. Oh, man. I mean, there's different levels of bondage. Maybe it's better that they should be in their current bondage than that they should lose their lives. Because we've had a lot of people lose their lives due to the fact that it was not better that they should be in bondage, given the level of bondage that they were in. Therefore, let us put a stop to the shedding of so much blood. I have a thing to say about all of that at the end of the chapter, by the way. And now Limhi told the king all the things concerning his father and the priests that had fled into the wilderness, and attributed the carrying away of their daughters to them. He's like, oh yeah, duh, it was the priests. And it came to pass that the king was pacified towards his people, and he said unto them, let us go forth to meet my people without arms, and I swear unto you with an oath that my people shall not slay thy people. And if I'm Limhi, like at this point, I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'm trusting your oaths. But he does. Good for him. And it came to pass that they followed the king and went forth without arms to meet the Lamanites. And it came to pass that they did meet the Lamanites. And the king of the Lamanites did bow himself down before them, and did plead in behalf of the people of Limhi. And when the Lamanites saw the people of Limhi, that they were without arms, they had compassion on them, and were pacified towards them, and returned with their king in peace to their own land. So here's my thing about that, dude. All I'm saying is just to consider the overview of what happened here. We've got just this terrible war. I mean, it's so bad that, like, listen to what Mormon says about it, that they, like, fought like dragons, and they fought for their wives and their children, and they were horribly outnumbered, and they just came out of their waiting places and began to slay them, and they just like fought this extremely gory battle Horrible war. And it was being fought for what the Nephites thought was this extremely noble cause. You know, they were fighting for their lives and for their wives and for their children. And it was all, this whole war was all because of a little secret combination. A little thing. It was neither side's fault. That's the big takeaway here. It wasn't, it was a war fought between two large parties of people, extremely gory, extremely gruesome, heartbreaking, tough, and it was started by neither one of them. It was just a little thing that a small group of people did that made one of the parties look really, really bad. I don't know, dude. Why is it in here? Why is it in here if that's not an important thing to consider? But also that Limhi made peace. That he, like, instead of just like fighting to the freaking death, it was like, whoa, dude, like, let's get to the bottom of this, actually. And they did, and they actually figured it out, which I think is also significant. Next chapter. Chapter 21. Limhi's people are smitten and defeated by the Lamanites. Uh-oh. Another war. After swearing another oath of peace, Limhi's people meet Ammon and are converted. They tell Ammon of the 24 Jaredite plates, which we've heard about before. So we're finally getting back to the original timeline. Like that, the reunion of Ammon is where we left off. Is where we started the flashback, really. Verse 1. And it came to pass that Limhi and his people returned to the city of Nephi and began to dwell in the land again in peace. It came to pass that Limhi and his people returned to the city of Nephi and began to dwell in the land again in peace, except they're under some pretty heavy bondage. And it came to pass that after many days, the Lamanites began again to be stirred up in anger against the Nephites. And they began to come into the borders of the land round about. So they're just like, they know it wasn't them that kidnapped the daughters of the Lamanites, but maybe it was like, I don't know, dude. For whatever reason, they started to conspire and be angry at the Lamanites again. Maybe they blamed, you know, they're like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't the priests of Noah. Maybe it was the priests of Noah that did this, but like, had these bozos not shown up here in the first place, like none of this would have happened. You know, and none of that's written down, but just, I'm just thinking out loud, like stuff you might hear today that makes you angry against an entire group of people. Even though the entire group of people, like, aren't actually bad. Now they durst not slay them because of the oath which their king had made unto Limhi. So they're not going to go to war. They're not going to kill them anymore. But they would smite them on their cheeks and exercise authority over them, and began to put heavy burdens upon their backs and drive them as they would a dumb ass. Yea, all this was done that the word of the Lord might be fulfilled. Something that Abinadi prophesied. But yeah, they're like, okay, well, we're not going to kill you because we promised that we wouldn't. But instead, law enforcement just like pushes them around and beats the crap out of them. And basically gives them these heavy tasks, and they're just slave drivers now. And now the afflictions of the Nephites were great, and there was no way that they could deliver themselves out of their hands, for the Lamanites had surrounded them on every side. So they just have way more firepower So there's no revolting here. And it came to pass that the people began to murmur with the king because of their afflictions, and they began to be desirous to go against them to battle. Okay, there is a revolt. They're like, please, 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 I know we're outnumbered. I know that they have way more firepower. Can we please go to battle with them, dude? This is too much. That's how they felt. And they did afflict the king sorely with their complaints. Therefore, he caved. He granted unto them that they should do according to their desires. Go exercise your agency. And they gathered themselves together again and put on their armor and went forth against the Lamanites to drive them out of their land. And it came to pass that the Lamanites did beat them and drove them back and slew many of them. So the instant they start retaliating and actually try to fight the Lamanites off, the Lamanites just whoop them. And now there was a great mourning and lamentation among the people of Limhi, the widow mourning for her husband, the son and the daughter mourning for their father, and the brothers for their brethren. Now there were a great many widows in the land, and they did cry mightily from day to day, for a great fear of the Lamanites had come upon them. And it came to pass that their continual cries did stir up the remainder of the people of Limhi to anger against the Lamanites. It's another interesting concept. Just the sheer lamenting from the widows in the land affected the remainder of the men to where they were so angry. It made them angry, dude. It made them so angry and so frustrated that they were like, we need to go fight them again, despite getting the crap kicked out of us the last time we did. And they went again to battle, but they were driven back again, suffering much loss. And who could have predicted that? Yea, they went again even the third time. So much for what Gideon said before, dude. So much for it be better that we're in bondage than we lose our lives. See, and this is this is exactly what I'm talking about. Then the level of bondage increased to the point where they did not feel that way anymore. They were like, at this point, we would rather lose our lives than be in this bondage. Interesting. 13, and they did humble themselves even to the dust, subjecting themselves to the yoke of bondage, submitting themselves to be smitten, and to be driven to and fro and burdened according to the desires of their enemies. And they did humble themselves even in the depths of humility, and they did cry mightily to God. Yea, even all the day long did they cry unto their God that he would deliver them out of their afflictions. Notice these patterns, dude. They go to battle 3 times to get out of this bondage, and then eventually they're so humbled that they're like, we're just going to be in bondage, I guess. We're going to be in bondage, but they cry to God. That's all they can do at that point. And you might think, well, let's go up with our arms in the strength of God. Let's cry mightily to God and then go up a 4th time in the strength of God. But that was not the answer this time. All they did was just do as they were told, go through this slave labor, and cry mightily unto God all the day long that they would be delivered out of the afflictions. And now the Lord was slow to hear their cry, which he is sometimes. And why? Because of their iniquities. If you're slow to hear the Lord, then the Lord is slow to hear you. Nevertheless, the Lord did hear their cries. He was slow to hear them, but he did hear them. Nevertheless, the Lord did hear their cries and began to soften the hearts of the Lamanites, that they began to ease their burdens. Yet the Lord did not see fit to deliver them out of bondage. We're going to make the burdens, we're going to make the tasks easier to do, but we're not going to deliver you right now. And it came to pass that they began to prosper by degrees in the land. and began to raise grain more abundantly, and flocks and herds, that they did not suffer with hunger. Got the hiccups. Now there was a great number of women, more than there was of men. Therefore King Limhi commanded that every man should impart to the support of the widows and their children, that they might not perish with hunger. And this they did because of the greatness of their number that had been slain. Good political move. Now the people of Limhi kept together in a body as much as it was possible, and secured their grain and their flocks. And the king himself did not trust his person without the walls of the city, unless he took his guards with him, fearing that he might by some means fall into the hands of the Lamanites. And he caused that his people should watch the land round about, that by some means they might take those priests that fled into the wilderness, who had stolen the daughters of the Lamanites, and that had caused such a great destruction to come upon them. For they were desirous to take them, that they might punish them. For they had come into the land of Nephi by night, and carried off their grain and many of their precious things. Therefore they laid wait for them. So, just add it to the list, dude. Add it to the list of horribly selfish moves by the priests of Noah. They freaking take the daughters of the Lamanites, cause this horrible, horrible war. Just tons of people are dying. And then instead of feeling even an ounce of remorse for it, on the other hand, they steal the Lamanites' food, their grains, and their precious things. They just have not an ounce of remorse in their body. And so now they're like vigilant. Now they're all waiting for him to show up so that they can capture them and punish them. Because they're still causing problems, dude. 22, and it came to pass that there was no more disturbance between the Lamanites and the people of Limhi, even until the time that Ammon and his brethren came into the land. So now Ammon shows up with his people from Zarahemla. And the king, having been without the gates of the city with his guard, discovered Ammon and his brethren, and supposing them to be the priests of Noah. Okay, remember, he just instantly encounters Ammon and binds him up and throws him into prison. And then when he talks to Ammon after he brings him out of prison, he says to him, I literally would kill you. I would already have killed you. In fact, it says it at the end of the verse. I'll finish the verse. The king, having been without the gates of the city with his guard, discovered Ammon and his brethren, and supposing them to be priests of Noah, therefore he caused that they should be taken and bound and cast into prison. And had they been the priests of Noah, he would have caused that they should be put to death. And that's what he tells Ammon back in like chapter 7 or 8. And he's like, you would already be dead if I wasn't so confused as to why you just waltzed up to me while I had my guards with me outside the walls of the city. And then he's like, well, it's because and Ammon, having no idea that the priests of Noah were out there doing all of this, was like, I just came to say what up. I mean, So, verse 24, but when he, Limhi, found that they were not the priests of Noah, but that they were his brethren and had come from the land of Zarahemla, he was filled with exceedingly great joy. Now King Limhi had sent, previous to the coming of Ammon, a small number of men to search for the land of Zarahemla, but they could not find it. So previously, Limhi put together a search party and sent them off to go find Zarahemla because they were in bondage. They needed help. And they didn't find Zarahemla, but they did find the Jaredite plates. And that's when Limhi tells Ammon, he's like, hey, we found these plates and we need somebody to interpret them. And Ammon's like, there's a guy that I know that can do it, but he lives back in the land of Zarahemla, so we need to get out of here and go live in Zarahemla. a small number of men to search for the land of Zarahemla, but they could not find it, and they were lost in the wilderness. Nevertheless, they did find a land which had been peopled, yea, a land which was covered with dry bones, yea, a land which had been peopled and which had been destroyed. And they, having supposed it to be the land of Zarahemla, oh man, that's awful, returned to the land of Nephi, having arrived in the borders of the land not many days before the coming of Ammon. Dude, I didn't realize that not only did they not find the land of Zarahemla, but they actually thought that the land covered in bones, the Jaredites, were the people of Zarahemla. That would be nightmarish. To go back like just 2 generations later, show up to this land and be like, oh my gosh, our entire people are extinct. What the heck happened here? But then how great would your joy be when Ammon shows up and he's like, hey, that wasn't Zarahemla, and I'm from Zarahemla, and we're trying to take you back to Zarahemla. You would just be like, that would just be the best news you've heard in literally your entire life. 27, and they brought a record with them, even a record of the people whose bones they had found, and it was engraven on plates of ore. And now Limhi was again filled with joy on learning from the mouth of Ammon that King Mosiah had a gift from God, whereby he could interpret such engravings. Yea, and Ammon also did rejoice. Yet Ammon and his brethren were filled with sorrow because so many of their brethren had been slain. Yeah, that would be sad to hear. And also that King Noah and his priests had caused the people to commit so many sins and iniquities against God. And they also did mourn for the death of Abinadi, and also for the departure of Alma and the people that went with him, who had formed a church of God through the strength and power of God, and faith on the words which had been spoken by Abinadi. So remember, Alma and his people, the people that he was teaching and converted, are still out there in the wilderness somewhere, which is kind of crazy. You know, I can only imagine that Ammon's like, dude, there's like Ammon and his people are still out there somewhere. And Limhi's like, yep. Yea, they did mourn for their departure, for they knew not whither they had fled. Now they would have gladly joined with them, for they themselves had entered into a covenant with God to serve him and keep his commandments. And now since the coming of Ammon, King Limhi had also entered into a covenant with God, and also many of his people to serve him and keep his commandments. And it came to pass that King Limhi and many of his people were desirous to be baptized, but there was none in the land that had authority from God. And Ammon declined doing this thing, considering himself an unworthy servant. So again, Alma does have the priesthood because he was a priest. All those rotten priests of Noah technically do have the authority, at least from what we've learned. Therefore, they did not at that time forth themselves enter in. Therefore, they did not at that time form themselves into a church, waiting upon the Spirit of the Lord. Now they were desirous to become even as Alma and his brethren, who had fled into the wilderness. See, that's crazy, dude. You would be so tempted to think like, well, we could just start a church anyway, dude. Like, God doesn't care. But he does. And they waited. There is an authority. There is a specific authority. They were desirous to be baptized as a witness and a testimony that they were willing to serve God with all their hearts. Nevertheless, they did prolong the time, and an account of their baptism shall be given hereafter. So Mormon spoils that for us and tells us that they do eventually get baptized. We'll hear about it later. And now all the study of Ammon and his people and King Limhi and his people was to deliver themselves out of the hands of the Lamanites and from bondage. So now they're working together to try and figure out how to free the people here. Chapter 22. Plans are made for the people to escape from Lamanite bondage. The Lamanites are made drunk. The people escape, return to Zarahemla, and become subject to King Mosiah. And now it came to pass that Ammon and King Limhi began to consult with the people how they should deliver themselves out of bondage. And even they did cause that all the people should gather themselves together. And this they did that they might have the voice of the people concerning the matter. And now it came to pass that Ammon and King Limhi, all the people, so they get all the people together to hear their input. Not just a few people, not just some representatives, but all the people to hear what they should do. Verse 2, and it came to pass that they could find no way to deliver themselves out of bondage, except it were to take their women and children, and their flocks, and their herds, and their tents, and depart into the wilderness. For the Lamanites being so numerous, it was impossible for the people of Limhi to contend with them, thinking to deliver themselves out of bondage by the sword. So it's one thing to be like just totally led by the Lord and the Lord just does it for you. And not to say that the Lord doesn't intervene in this process, but they had to counsel and they had to think about it, and they decided that they could not go even with the strength of the Lord to deliver themselves out of bondage by the sword. Perhaps sometimes in life we have to just flee. We can't fight it, even if you're God's people. Now it came to pass that Gideon went forth and stood before the king, and said unto him, Now, O king, thou hast hitherto hearkened unto my words many times when we have been contending with our brethren the Lamanites. And now, O king, if thou hast not found me to be an unprofitable servant, or if thou hast hitherto listened to my words in any degree, and they have been of service to thee, even so I desire that thou wouldst listen to my words at this time, and I will be thy servant and deliver this people out of bondage. And Gideon's like, if you've ever considered anything I've said to be of value, I've got a plan, listen to it. And the king granted unto him that he might speak. And Gideon said unto him, Behold, the back pass. I always loved that verse. Behold, the back pass through the back wall on the back side of the city. The Lamanites, or the guards of the Lamanites, by night are drunken. Therefore, let us send a proclamation among all this people, that they gather together their flocks and herds, that they may drive them into the wilderness by night. It's really like a movie script. And I will go according to thy command and pay the last tribute of wine to the Lamanites. And they will be drunken, and we will pass through the secret pass on the left of their camp when they are drunken and asleep. Thus we will depart with our women and our children, our flocks and our herds into the wilderness, and we will travel around the land of Shilom. And it came to pass that the king hearkened unto the words of Gideon. And King Limhi caused that his people should gather their flocks together. And he sent the tribute of wine to the Lamanites, and he also sent more wine as a present unto them. And they did drink freely of the wine which King Limhi did send unto them. Such a classic tactic, too. There are so many times in the Book of Mormon where they just are like, what do we do? What do we do? There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Oh, let's give the Lamanites a bunch of wine and make them drunk. And it works every time. And it came to pass that the people of King Limhi did depart by night into the wilderness with their flocks and their herds. And they went round about the land of Shilom in the wilderness and bent their course towards the land of Zarahemla, being led by Ammon and his brethren. It came to pass that the people of King Limhi did depart by night into the wilderness with their flocks and bent their course towards the land of Zarahemla, being led by Ammon and his brethren. So they get out of the city. Verse 12, and they had taken all their gold and silver and their precious things which they could carry, and also their provisions with them into the wilderness, and they pursued their journey. And after being many days in the wilderness, they arrived in the land of Zarahemla and joined Mosiah's people and became his subjects. And it came to pass that Mosiah received them with joy, and he also received their records, and also the records which had been found by the people of Limhi. And now it came to pass, when the Lamanites had found that the people of Limhi had departed out of the land by night, that they sent an army into the wilderness to pursue them. And after they had pursued them 2 days, they could no longer follow their tracks. Therefore, they were lost in the wilderness. So the Lamanites realize that Limhi and his people have left, and so they send an army into the wilderness. The army goes after them, can't find them. They turn back and eventually get lost in the wilderness. So we've got the priests of Noah somewhere out there. Now we've got this army somewhere out there. And guess who else is out there, dude? Alma and the Church of God. So the next, I think it's the next 2 chapters. Let's see what it says. Yeah, chapters 23 and 24. An account of Alma and the people of the Lord who were driven into the wilderness by the people of King Noah. So now we see what happens with Alma and his people while they're out in the wilderness over the course of the next 2 chapters. So that is where we will end today. We will pick it up next time. But yeah, dude, I don't know. Lots of stuff in this story about like the government and like at a federal level and at a state level, and wars and contentions between the two, and taxes and bondage and deliverance and peace, and I don't know. Just a lot of important lessons to be learned here, I think. So think about that, and I will see you guys in the next one.